The air in the study pod felt heavy as Mildura's fingers hovered over the activation prompt. Flix, Tela, and Jorv leaned forward, their previous dismissal of human studies suddenly replaced by curiosity. "Are we sure about this?" Tela asked, her telepathic voice unusually quiet in their minds. "Level 5 clearance material could get us expelled." "Officer Carter gave us permission," Mildura replied. "Besides, don't you want to know the truth?" Before anyone could object further, she pressed the activation button. The lights in the pod dimmed as the display expanded to surround them with a three-dimensional projection. They found themselves seemingly aboard a human vessel, the date stamp showing it was from 15 years ago. "This is Captain Samantha Wright of the U.S. Defiant," a human female in a blue uniform spoke directly to the camera. "Ship's log, stardate 217245. We've received a distress signal from a non-human vessel in the Proxima Centauri system. We are the only ship within range. First contact protocols are in effect, but rescue takes priority." The aliens watched as the camera followed Captain Wright through corridors filled with busy human crew members. The ship itself was less advanced than their own vessels, but moved with purpose and efficiency. "They're rushing toward unknown aliens," Jorv noted, his crystalline body reflecting the changing light of the projection. "Without knowing if it's a trap." On screen, the humans gathered in what appeared to be a command center. A holographic display showed a damaged ship drifting near a radiation belt. "Sensors indicate life forms aboard," a human male reported. "But the radiation levels are critical. Any rescue team would have limited exposure time before suffering permanent damage." Captain Wright's face hardened. "How many life forms?" 23. "Based on the ship design, likely Meridian." Tela gasped. "That's my species." "Options?" Captain Wright asked her crew. A solemn silence fell before another human spoke. "Captain, we have radiation suits, but they won't provide full protection for more than 30 minutes. That's not enough time to evacuate 23 beings." "Then we'll need more teams rotating in and out," the captain decided without hesitation. "I'll leave the first team myself." "Captain," objected another crew member, "regulations state that you should remain aboard during dangerous operations." "Noted and ignored, Lieutenant Perry," Captain Wright replied. "I won't order anyone into that level of danger without going myself." The footage shifted to the human rescue teams preparing. They injected themselves with medications, donned protective suits, and loaded emergency equipment. "These medications," Mildura whispered, pulling up supplementary data, "they're taking anti-radiation drugs that have serious side effects. Long-term organ damage." They knew this before they went in. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the humans boarded the Meridian vessel. The camera followed Captain Wright as she encountered the first aliens, Meridians like Tela, but injured and frightened. "We come from Earth," Captain Wright said slowly, making universal peaceful gestures. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." The footage showed humans carrying injured Meridians, working frantically against the clock as their suit radiation indicators climbed to dangerous levels. When one human's suit was damaged, he simply continued working, though visibly in pain. "Team 1, you've reached exposure limits," came a voice from their ship. "Return immediately." "2 more Meridians in the engine room," Captain Wright responded, her breathing labored. "We can't leave them." "Captain, your radiation levels are critical. Send Team 2 to the extraction point. We'll meet them there with the last survivors." The footage continued, showing the humans successfully rescuing all 23 Meridians, despite 5 humans suffering severe radiation exposure, including the captain. The final scene showed Captain Wright in a medical bay, visibly ill from radiation, receiving a message from the Meridian government thanking her for the rescue. The projection ended, leaving the study pod in silence. "I don't understand," Clicks finally said. "This shows humans helping aliens at great personal risk. Why would this be restricted?" The lecture hall of Galactic Xenoversity buzzed with chatter as students of various species found their seats. Tentacles, claws, paws, and appendages of all kinds moved excitedly as news spread through the room. Professor Zektar, a tall Arcturan with shimmering blue scales, stood silently at the podium, waiting for the commotion to settle. "Have you heard?" Clicks, a four-armed Vesperian, with compound eyes that reflected the room's light in a kaleidoscope of colors, leaned toward his friend Jorv. The council made it official. Humans are banned from all galactic educational institutions. Jorv, whose silicon-based body made a soft, grinding sound as he turned, let out a wheezing laugh. "About time. Those violent apes don't belong among civilized species." From behind them, Tela, a slender Meridian with natural telepathic abilities, joined the conversation. "My elder cousin works at the diplomatic center. She says they're keeping a few humans as liaisons, but otherwise, the bipeds are being contained to their solar system. For everyone's safety," added Clicks with a mock shudder. The room fell silent as Professor Zektar cleared his throat. "All three of them. Students of xenobiology, welcome to your final term. Before we begin today's lecture on convergent evolution, I must address the announcement that has clearly captured your attention." The professor's middle eye blinked slowly, a sign of Arcturan displeasure. The Galactic Council's decision to restrict human participation in higher education is now in effect. However, I caution you against the simplistic reactions I've been hearing. Clicks raised two of his four hands. "Professor, isn't the ban just acknowledging what we already know? Humans are primitive and dangerous. Their exclusion protects our academic environment." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. "A convenient assessment, student Clicks, when you've never met a human," the professor replied. "I find it interesting how quickly students of science accept hearsay over evidence." Tela's voice entered the minds of those around her. "But the evidence is clear, Professor. Humans evolved as predators. Their history is filled with violence. They reached space while still fighting among themselves." A willowy Futurian in the front row emitted pulses of light in their species' equivalent of nervous laughter. "I watched a documentary about their world wars. They nearly destroyed their planet twice before discovering basic fusion power." Professor Zektar tapped a slender claw against the podium. "And yet, despite predictions, they did not exterminate themselves. Curious, isn't it? A species so supposedly bent on destruction, yet here they are, reaching for the stars. Only to be turned away," Jorb said, his crystalline body catching the light. "As they should be." The debate might have continued, but the room's doors slid open with a hiss. Administrator Foe, an ancient Thessalian whose eye stalks drooped with age, hovered into the room. "Professor, students, pardon the interruption." The administrator's voice crackled. "In light of recent developments, the board has approved a special lecture series on the human question. Attendance is mandatory for all xenobiology majors." Groans and clicks of annoyance filled the room. "A waste of study time," muttered Clicks. "What's there to understand about humans that we don't already know?" Administrator Foe's eye stalks stiffened. "Perhaps, young student, the fact that you believe there is nothing to learn is precisely why this lecture series is necessary." As the administrator left, Professor Zektar regarded the class thoughtfully. "For tomorrow, instead of our planned reading, I want each of you to access the public archives on human biology and social structure. Come prepared with 3 aspects of humanity that might have contributed to their current status in galactic society." As students gathered their devices to leave, Jorv turned to Clicks and Tela. "This is ridiculous. Studying humans is like studying ancient single-celled organisms, interesting only as a reminder of how far superior species have evolved." Tela nodded, her silvery skin reflecting the room's lights. "Still, we need to complete the assignment. Library session after last class." "Fine." Clicks agreed, all 4 shoulders slumping in resignation. "But I already know my 3 aspects. They're violent, primitive, and don't belong among the stars with the rest of us." None of them noticed a small Meridian named Melura in the back row, quietly downloading every available file on humans she could find. her eyes wide with curiosity rather than contempt. "That's not the Beta Centauri footage," a voice said from the doorway. Professor Zektor stood there, all three eyes focused on them. "That was just the Proxima rescue mission, one of many similar incidents." "Then why show us this?" Jorv asked. "Because," the professor said, entering the pod, "you needed context before seeing what happened at Beta Centauri. You needed to understand that humans are capable of great sacrifice and compassion." "So what happened at Beta Centauri?" Mildura asked. Professor Zektar's middle eye narrowed. "Something that made the Galactic Council realize that humans weren't just compassionate rescuers. Something that terrified them." Professor Zektar settled into the study pod with the four students. His scaled fingers moved across the console, entering a complex security code. "What you are about to see is restricted to the highest levels of galactic security," he said. "I'm only showing you this because I believe the truth should be known, especially to future xenobiologists." The display flickered, and new footage appeared. The date stamp showed it was from 8 years ago. The scene showed a beautiful blue-green planet with 2 small moons. "Beta Centauri IV," the professor explained. "The first official human colony outside their solar system." The footage zoomed in to show a settlement nestled between mountains and a large lake. Humans moved about, building structures, planting crops, and setting up equipment. Children played in open areas while adults worked. "This doesn't look threatening," Tila observed. "Keep watching," Professor Zektar said quietly. The footage switched to a woman in a lab coat speaking to the camera. "Dr. Olivia Reyes, Colony Science Director, Beta Centauri IV. Day 127 of settlement. Our agricultural experiments are showing promising results. The modified earth crops are adapting well to the soil conditions." The camera panned to show greenhouses and fields where humans tended to plants. Then it moved to another human, a muscular man with short hair. "Security Chief Daniel Miller," he introduced himself. "Colony defenses are minimal but adequate for wildlife management. We have 20 trained security personnel and basic perimeter sensors. The Galactic Council assured us this region is free from any territorial claims or hostile species." Flix snorted. "Minimal defenses. Were they naive or just stupid?" "They were trusting," Mildura said softly. The footage continued, showing peaceful colony life. Then suddenly, alarms blared. The camera shook as people began running. Security Chief Miller appeared again, now wearing a protective vest and carrying a small weapon. "We have multiple ships entering atmosphere," he reported, his voice tense but controlled. "Unknown configuration. Not matching any friendly registry. All colonists proceed to shelter zones. This is not a drill." The footage switched to an external view showing 5 sleek, predatory-looking ships descending toward the colony. They were black with red markings, their design clearly built for attack. "Cytherians," gasped Jorv. The colony was attacked by Cytherians. Professor Zektar nodded grimly. "A raiding party looking for easy resources and slaves." The alien students watched in horror as the ships landed and tall, armored figures emerged. The Cytherians stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and reptilian features. They carried energy weapons and began firing indiscriminately at colony buildings. The footage cut to Dr. Reyes hurrying children into an underground bunker. "Everyone stay calm," she was saying, though fear was evident in her eyes. "Follow the emergency protocols." Meanwhile, Security Chief Miller was organizing the colony's defenders. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," he told his security team. "But we need to buy time for the civilians to reach the bunkers. Use the buildings for cover. Conserve ammunition." The fighting began. The human security forces were clearly outmatched, their weapons barely damaging the Cytherian armor. The raiders advanced methodically, destroying buildings and capturing any humans they could find. "This is a massacre," Tella whispered, her telepathic voice trembling in their minds. They watched as one by one, the human defenders fell. Chief Miller was hit in the shoulder but continued fighting, pulling an injured colonist to safety. Dr. Rise was seen sealing the bunker door from the inside, standing protectively in front of the children as Cytherians pounded on the door. "I don't understand," Clix said, his four hands clenched tightly. "This shows humans as victims. Why would this make the Council fear them?" "Because," Officer Carter said, having silently returned to the doorway of the study pod, "this is only the beginning. You haven't seen what happened next." "What did happen next?" Meldera asked, unable to look away from the footage of colonists fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Officer Carter's expression was solemn. The moment that changed how the galaxy sees humans forever. Professor Zektar settled into the study pod with the four students. His scaled fingers moved across the console, entering a complex security code. "What you are about to see is restricted to the highest levels of galactic security," he said. "I'm only showing you this because I believe the truth should be known, especially to future xenobiologists." The display flickered, and new footage appeared. The date stamp showed it was from 8 years ago. The scene showed a beautiful blue-green planet with 2 small moons. "Beta Centauri IV," the professor explained. "The first official human colony outside their solar system." The footage zoomed in to show a settlement nestled between mountains and a large lake. Humans moved about, building structures, planting crops, and setting up equipment. Children played in open areas while adults worked. "This doesn't look threatening," Tila observed. "Keep watching," Professor Zektar said quietly. The footage switched to a woman in a lab coat speaking to the camera. "Dr. Olivia Rice, Colony Science Director, Beta Centauri IV. Day 127 of settlement. Our agricultural experiments are showing promising results. The modified Earth crops are adapting well to the soil conditions." The camera panned to show greenhouses and fields where humans tended to plants. Then it moved to another human, a muscular man with short hair. "Security Chief Daniel Miller," he introduced himself. "Colony defenses are minimal but adequate for wildlife management. We have 20 trained security personnel and basic perimeter sensors. The Galactic Council assured us this region is free from any territorial claims or hostile species." Flix snorted. "Minimal defenses. Were they naive or just stupid?" "They were trusting," Meldera said softly. The footage continued, showing peaceful colony life. Then suddenly, alarms blared. The camera shook as people began running. Security Chief Miller appeared again, now wearing a protective vest and carrying a small weapon. "We have multiple ships entering atmosphere," he reported, his voice tense but controlled. "Unknown configuration. Not matching any friendly registry. All colonists proceed to shelter zones. This is not a drill." The footage switched to an external view showing 5 sleek, predatory-looking ships descending toward the colony. They were black with red markings, their design clearly built for attack. "Cytherians," gasped Jorv. The colony was attacked by Cytherians. Professor Zektar nodded grimly. "A raiding party looking for easy resources and slaves." The alien students watched in horror as the ships landed and tall, armored figures emerged. The Cytherians stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and reptilian features. They carried energy weapons and began firing indiscriminately at colony buildings. The footage cut to Dr. Rice hurrying children into an underground bunker. "Everyone stay calm," she was saying, though fear was evident in her eyes. "Follow the emergency protocols." Meanwhile, Security Chief Miller was organizing the colony's defenders. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," he told his security team. "But we need to buy time for the civilians to reach the bunkers. Use the buildings for cover. Conserve ammunition." The fighting began. The human security forces were clearly outmatched, their weapons barely damaging the Cytherian armor. The raiders advanced methodically, destroying buildings and capturing any humans they could find. "This is a massacre," Tella whispered, her telepathic voice trembling in their minds. They watched as one by one, the human defenders fell. Chief Miller was hit in the shoulder but continued fighting, pulling an injured colonist to safety. Dr. Rice was seen sealing the bunker door from the inside, standing protectively in front of the children as Cytherians pounded on the door. "I don't understand," Clix said, his four hands clenched tightly. "This shows humans as victims. Why would this make the Council fear them?" "Because," Officer Carter said, having silently returned to the doorway of the study pod, "this is only the beginning. You haven't seen what happened next." "What did happen next?" Melora asked, unable to look away from the footage of colonists fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Officer Carter's expression was solemn. The moment that changed how the galaxy sees humans forever. Officer Carter sat down with the students as Professor Zektar continued the footage. The timestamp showed 3 hours into the Cytherian attack. The human colony was partially in ruins. Fires burned in several buildings. Bodies of colonists lay in the streets. By this point, Officer Carter explained, the colony had lost 17 security personnel. Only 3 remained, including Chief Miller. The Cytherians had breached 2 of the 4 civilian bunkers. The footage showed Chief Miller with a bleeding head wound, crouched behind a fallen wall with 2 other defenders. His uniform was torn and burned. "We can't hold the main bunker much longer," one defender told him. "We're down to our last power cells." Miller looked around at the destruction, then at a group of colonists who had been captured. The Cytherians were binding them with energy restraints, preparing to load them onto their ships. "They're taking our people," Miller said, his voice changed from the calm professional they had seen earlier. It was lower now, rougher. "They're taking our people." The camera angle switched to inside the main bunker, where Dr. Rice stood with the children and elderly colonists. The bunker shook as something heavy slammed against the door. "The door won't hold much longer," an older man said to her. Dr. Rice looked at the frightened faces around her, then reached into a storage compartment and began distributing tools, hammers, cutting implements, even kitchen knives. "If they get through," she said calmly, "aim for the joints in their armor." She picked up a heavy wrench herself. "We are not merchandise. We are not prey." Back outside, Miller tapped his communicator. "All remaining colonists, this is Chief Miller. They've taken 30 of our people. They will take more if we let them." He paused, breathing heavily. "We will not let them." To the aliens watching the footage, something seemed to change in Miller's demeanor. His posture shifted. His eyes narrowed. The 2 defenders with him underwent a similar transformation. "What's happening to them?" Jorv asked, his crystalline body dimming in confusion. "Watch," Officer Carter said quietly. In the footage, Miller pulled something from his pocket, a small holophoto of a woman and child. He looked at it for a moment, then put it away. "Plan Delta," he told his team. "Full offensive. No retreat." The defenders looked at him in shock. "Sir, that's suicide against their numbers." "Better to die standing than live as their slaves," Miller replied. "Call in everyone who can still fight." The scene shifted to show colonists who had been hiding emerging from various locations. Farmers, technicians, teachers, ordinary people armed with tools, broken equipment, even rocks. They converged on Miller's position. "Those with ranged weapons provide cover," Miller instructed. "Everyone else, we go in waves. They don't expect us to attack. Use that surprise." What followed shocked the alien students into silence. The colonists, despite their injuries and primitive weapons, launched themselves at the Cytherians. The first wave was cut down quickly, but they managed to disable 2 raiders. The second wave used the fallen Cytherians' weapons. "They're not retreating," Tella whispered. "They should be retreating." Instead, the humans pressed forward. When one fell, another took their place. Their faces had changed. Gone was the fear, replaced by something the alien students had never seen before. "What's wrong with their expressions?" Clix asked, all 4 hands clenched nervously. "Nothing is wrong," Professor Zektar answered. "This is what humans call fury or battle rage, a psychological state they can enter when protecting their own. The footage showed Dr. Rice and her group bursting from the bunker, catching Cytherians from behind. Despite having only tools, they fought with a coordination and determination that seemed impossible. The most shocking moment came when Chief Miller, already wounded in 3 places, charged directly at the Cytherian leader. The alien was twice his size and fully armored, but Miller ducked under its weapons and drove a broken metal rod through a joint in its armor. Both went down, but only Miller rose again. The aliens watched as the tide of battle slowly turned. The remaining Cytherians, clearly confused by the unexpected resistance, began to retreat toward their ships. "Impossible," Jorv whispered. "Completely impossible." "Now you understand," Officer Carter said. "This is why the Council fears us." The footage ended, leaving the study pod in heavy silence. Klix, Tella, Jorv, and Melura sat motionless, trying to process what they had witnessed. Professor Zektar dimmed the display and turned to Officer Carter. "Perhaps you should explain the rest," the professor said. "You have more direct knowledge of what followed." Officer Carter nodded and faced the students. "What you just saw was only part of the Beta Centauri incident. The recording ends there because the colony's main cameras were destroyed in the fighting. But what happened next is why humans are considered problematic." "They won?" Melura asked softly. "Against Cytherians?" "Not just one," Carter replied. "The remaining colonists, farmers, scientists, teachers, didn't stop at driving the raiders away. They pursued them." Jorv's crystalline form flickered in disbelief. "Pursued? You mean they followed the Cytherians to their ships?" "Yes," Carter confirmed. "Using captured Cytherian weapons and tools from the colony, 37 surviving colonists attacked the raiders as they retreated. They didn't just want to survive. They wanted to make sure the Cytherians never returned." The officer tapped the console, bringing up a different recording, this one from a Galactic Council investigation team that arrived later. "This footage was taken 3 days after the attack," Carter explained. "The new images showed the aftermath. The colony was damaged but standing. Humans were rebuilding structures, tending to injured people, and burying their dead. But at the edge of the settlement sat 3 Cytherian ships, damaged beyond repair, their hulls torn open by what appeared to be improvised explosives. 37 colonists," Carter continued, "with minimal combat training and improvised weapons, managed to destroy 3 warships and kill or capture 42 Cytherian raiders." "That's not possible," Klix stammered, all 4 hands trembling. The Council investigators thought the same, Professor Zektar interjected, "until they interviewed the survivors and viewed all available footage." Carter nodded. The official report concluded that humans demonstrate a capability they termed adaptive combat response. When faced with threats to their community, particularly their young, humans undergo physiological and psychological changes. "They become more dangerous," Tella whispered. "More effective," Carter corrected. "Our bodies release chemicals that increase strength and pain tolerance. Our thinking narrows to focus entirely on protecting our people. It's an evolutionary response from our predator past." The professor activated another file on the display. It showed official Galactic Council documents with sections highlighted. After the Beta Centauri incident, Professor Zektar explained, the Council secretly classified humans as a latent predator species. This document shows their decision process. Mildura leaned forward to read aloud. "Unlike evolved predator species such as the Cytherians, humans normally present as cooperative and non-aggressive. However, when threatened, they demonstrate combat capabilities exceeding even evolved predator species. Most concerning is their ability to coordinate complex group actions while in this state." "So the ban," Jorv began, "was never about protecting the galactic community from primitive, violent humans," Carter finished. "It was about keeping humans away from advanced education that might make us even more effective in conflict." "But that's not fair," Melura exclaimed, surprising herself with her outburst. "You only fought because you were attacked. You were protecting children. Carter smiled sadly. That's the human perspective. But from the Council's view, any species that can defeat Cytherians with inferior technology and minimal training is potentially dangerous. But why keep this secret? Clicks asked, gesturing at the footage. Why not just tell everyone humans are dangerous? Because, Professor Zektar said, fear is easier to manage than admiration. If young aliens knew the truth, some might admire humans. Some might even question whether the Council's fear is justified. Like we're doing now, Tella realized. Exactly, Officer Carter said. The Council doesn't want students questioning their decisions. They want humans contained, not because we're primitive, but because they're afraid of what we might become if given full access to galactic knowledge. So what happens now? Meldera asked. Now that we know the truth. Professor Zektar looked at the students thoughtfully. What happens now depends on you. Knowledge brings responsibility. I want to meet them, Meldera said suddenly. The survivors from Beta Centauri. Are any of them still alive? Officer Carter seemed surprised by the request. Yes, several colonists still live on the rebuilt settlement. Some work with the diplomatic court now. Could we speak with one of them? She pressed. I want to understand, not just see footage, but hear directly from someone who was there. The human and the professor exchanged glances. It might be possible, Carter said slowly. One of the survivors actually works here on the station, Maria Alvarez. She was a colonial engineer during the attack. 2 days later, the 4 students sat nervously in a private meeting room. The door slid open to reveal a human female who appeared older than Officer Carter. Her hair was silver gray, and fine lines marked her face. She walked with a slight limp, but moved with purpose. So you're the students who've been watching our darkest hour, she said, her voice strong despite her age. I'm Maria Alvarez, formerly lead engineer of Beta Centauri colony. The aliens remained silent, unsure how to respond to a human who had done things they had previously thought impossible. Maria sat down across from them. Alan tells me you have questions about what happened. Meldera found her voice first. The footage we saw, it showed humans changing when you were attacked, becoming something different. Maria smiled sadly. Not different, just more focused, more intense versions of ourselves. But you killed Cytherians, Jorv said, his crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy, with primitive weapons. We defended our home, Maria corrected gently. There's a difference between being violent and being protective. We don't want to fight. We avoid it when possible. But when our children, our families, our community is threatened, she paused. We become very difficult to stop. The Council fears this capacity, Tela observed. The Council misunderstands it, Maria replied. They see only the potential for destruction. They miss the fact that this same intensity drives our art, our science, our exploration. She reached into her pocket and produced a small device. May I show you something? She activated the device, projecting images around the room. Unlike the previous combat footage, these showed humans in different settings, building massive structures, performing intricate surgeries, creating beautiful art, teaching children, exploring dangerous terrain. This is the same species you saw fighting, Maria explained. Our capacity for intensity isn't just for battle. It's for everything we care about deeply. One image showed a human pulling an alien child from a collapsed building. Another showed human doctors working tirelessly to cure a disease affecting a non-human species. Since the ban, Maria continued, humans have still been working throughout the galaxy, just not as students or teachers. We serve as emergency responders, search and rescue specialists, security consultants, roles where our intensity is considered useful rather than threatening. But wouldn't education make you even more effective? Clicks asked, genuinely curious now instead of dismissive. Maria nodded. That's what the Council fears. They worry that combining our protective instinct with advanced galactic knowledge might make us too powerful. Are they right to fear that? Tella asked directly. Maria considered the question carefully. I think they misunderstand the nature of our strength. We're not banned because we're dangerous to you. We're banned because we're the only species willing to die protecting others, even others we've just met. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this. What happened to the children in the bunker? Melura asked softly. The ones Dr. Rice was protecting. Maria's expression softened. They survived. All of them. And that's why we fought so hard. She looked at each student in turn. Any human would tell you the same thing. The children were worth every sacrifice. And the Cytherians? Jorv asked. Did they ever return? No, Maria said simply. They've never attacked another human settlement. The implications of that statement hung in the air between them. 1 week later, the lecture hall of Galactic Xenoversity buzzed with excitement. Word had spread that 4 xenobiology students would present controversial findings about humans. The room was packed with students, professors, and even several Galactic Council representatives. Clix, once the most dismissive of humans, now stood confidently at the podium. Tela, Jorv, and Nalura joined him at the front of the hall. Fellow students and honored guests. Clix began, his 4 hands moving expressively. 1 week ago, our research group laughed at the human ban. We considered it appropriate and obvious. Today, we present evidence that the ban is based not on facts, but on fear. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A council representative shifted uncomfortably. With permission from Officer Alan Carter and Professor Zektar, we will show selected footage from the Beta Centauri incident, Tela announced. We ask that you reserve judgment until the presentation concludes. The lights dimmed, and the footage played, carefully edited to show both the Cytherian attack and the human response. Gasps echoed through the hall as the audience witnessed the colonists' transformation from peaceful settlers to determined fighters. When the lights returned, Jorv spoke. The official reason for the human ban suggests they are primitive and dangerous. Our research reveals a different truth. Humans are banned because advanced species fear their potential. Melura stepped forward. Humans possess a unique evolutionary trait. When protecting their community, especially their children, they demonstrate extraordinary capabilities. The Council classified this as dangerous. We suggest it should be classified as admirable. The Council representative stood. This presentation borders on sedition. The Council's decision on human education restrictions is final. Professor Zektar moved to the front of the room. As senior xenobiologist at this institution, I've been researching humans for 40 years. My findings support these students' conclusions. The professor's 3 eyes swept the room. For decades, I've submitted reports suggesting the human ban is scientifically unjustified. Each report has been classified and ignored. The council representative sputtered, "Professor, you overstep." "No," came a voice from the back of the hall. Maria Alvarez walked slowly down the center aisle. "It is the council that has overstepped. You claim to represent a civilization based on knowledge and understanding, yet you ban an entire species based on fear." The hall fell silent as she reached the front. "I fought at Beta Centauri not because I enjoy violence, but because I value life, all life, including the lives of those who would never fight themselves." She turned to face the audience. "You fear what humans might become with education. Consider instead what the galaxy might become with humans as true partners." In the silence that followed, a young Vesperian student stood. "I've worked in the medical center where humans serve as emergency responders. Twice I've seen them rush into danger to save others. If that's what humans do without advanced education, imagine what they could do with it." Others began to stand, sharing stories of human bravery, compassion, and ingenuity. The council representative looked increasingly uncomfortable. Professor Zektar raised his hands for quiet. "Today marks the beginning of a new conversation about humans. I am officially submitting a petition to review the educational ban, with this presentation as supporting evidence." The hall erupted in excitement. As the crowd dispersed, the 4 students gathered with Professor Zektar, Officer Carter, and Maria. Will this actually change anything? Jorv asked. Change takes time, Maria replied. But it always begins with truth. 1 year later, a human stood nervously outside the main entrance to Galactic HFY. Jeff Howard adjusted his new uniform and took a deep breath. First day jitters? Asked a familiar voice. Click's approach, all 4 arms extending in welcome. A little, Jeff admitted. I'm the first human student here in 9 years. Not the last, though, Clix assured him. 20 more are scheduled to arrive next term. Tella, Jorv, and Nalura joined them, their previous contempt replaced by genuine welcome. The council representatives are watching your admission closely, Tella warned. Some still think this experiment will end badly. Jeff smiled. Then we'll just have to prove them wrong. After all, that's what humans do best, exceed expectations. Come on, Nalura said warmly. Your xenobiology class is waiting. I think you'll find we have a lot to learn from each other.